Now, the Order 1886. This game had gamers' expectations worldwide at an all-time high. But now that it's released, well, let's just say said gamers are up in arms with pitchforks and torches. Well, here's what I think of the Order 1886.
The following is brought to you by Straight Games for all your new and used games and accessories.
The Order 1886, released February 20th exclusively for the PS4, developed by relatively newcomers to the console scene ready at dawn. Now I do and kinda don't see what all the hoopla is about regarding this game. Again, gamers, lower or at least have realistic expectations, man. I guess some people expected this to be what games like, let's say, Bloodborne is. That would be the first place some went wrong. Here's the breakdown.
Some things we need to find out for ourselves.
The Order 1886 is set in a Victorian-era London where soldiers use advanced weaponry to battle against ancient foes, primarily Lycans. You're a part of the group called the Knights who fight for the Order. You're equipped not only with advanced weapons but a liquid called black water which heals you, seems to give you extra strength and probably prolonged life. You assume the role of Sir Galahad, who, other than the first scenes where he obviously had a change of heart, is a supporter and a true patriot for his country and the Order. Later down the line, there are many twists and turns as Galahad realizes not all is as it seems, uncovers treachery with the aid of his newfound allies, the rebels he once fought valiantly against.
If I didn't know you any better, I'd think you'd led me into a rebel ambush.
As I might fear an arrest.
We do not have time for this!
The story isn't by any means original, but splendidly told with great voice acting, compelling visuals, remarkable scores, and solid gameplay mechanics that, for most parts, attempt to take us away from the conventional approach to third-person cover-based shooters. Whether devs succeeded at this ambitious endeavor, months after its release, it's still up for debate. Let's get straight to the gameplay.
Patience, old friend. All in due time.
Controls in the Order 1886 are very intuitive and responsive for most parts. Going in and out of cover seems pretty tight, with the exception of the added physics, where, while in cover, if you get shot you stand up. That makes little to no sense to me. Moving on. The physics, however, when scaling obstacles, jumping from ledge to ledge feels just right, as you don't feel as nimble as, let's say, a character in Assassin's Creed or Dying Light. You actually feel while controlling your character that he is indeed weighed down by his armor. Ready at Dawn also should be commended for a solid third-person camera. This, unfortunately, is rare and worthy of acknowledgement.
You had better be right. For your own sake.
The weapons offered here are good, very effective for most part. Some a bit over the top and feel as if they fell victim to over-designing like this gun here. The thermite rifle. Seems like it does the job, but in a roundabout kind of way. Where the Order 1886 starts to get questionable is when you get deeper into the gameplay and are presented with certain elements that come off very gimmicky and irrelevant. The Order pays a lot of attention to its details. So much attention that it seems like developers were trying to show off how pretty and shiny and detailed they could make this game. Now we see illustrations of this in some not so overdone but still questionable things like lockpicking. This here is fine and acceptable. Not 100% relevant, but I can still see where one might need to pick a lock in this game. But then, there are a whole lot of other completely useless and redundant interactions going on here, like picking up a picture or a document, turning it over, inspecting a weapon. Now I say redundant, because as visually impressive as they are presented, there really is no reason to be doing these things. They play no significant role in the game's progression. I know that we see this kind of trivial interactions in games like Resident Evil all the time, but the way it was presented in the Order seems superfluous. Really like the devs were placing too much emphasis on how good they could make the game look over actual gameplay. This brings me to the linear gameplay presented in the Order 1886. Now, one would think that with all these details, all these interaction possibilities, the Order was gearing up for one grand experience. One where you could go many places and do many things, especially with all the research you've been doing so far in the game, reading this, inspecting that, and so on. But no, the Order 1886 sends you on a very linear set-in-stone path where your hand is held most of the way. Now I'm fine with this, as I do appreciate a change of pace after playing through games in their entirety like Dying Light and even The Evil Within. But even with that said, I do believe the devs overdid it a bit here. The Order 1886 is such a beautiful game, one that seems to be exploding with potential, but said potential fails to be realized due to the restrictions the game imposes on you all the way through. Kinda feels like I'm almost playing a FMV game. And I agree, titles like Call of Duty does this kind of thing all the time, But with a game like The Order, I expected more freedom. The game feels like the devs themselves were restrained. It feels like they wanted to do more, but had to settle for a lot of squeezing in, if you get what I'm saying. Like a scene where you used the touchpad. This only happened once. It feels like there was so much room for improvement, but the devs either didn't utilize it because they were lazy, inexperienced, or complacent. Who knows?
I knew it very differently once.
Still on the restrictive gameplay, we're presented with so many QuickTime events here. Now, QuickTime events are fine when sparsely placed, but almost everything is a QuickTime event. It's not like Dying Light, where you might get a QuickTime here, then another there. Every boss battle, and then some, are covered up with QuickTime events. Further takes away any semblance of immersion you might have had here. Some might argue that QuickTime events are indeed immersive, but I beg to differ, especially when you're bombarded with them. Too much hand-holding. Even when going through a stealth stage, these QuickTime events pop up. And generally, I don't believe a game like this should have stealth stages. This isn't Call of Duty. I'd expect a game like this one to always be in stealth mode. If you see a situation that calls for stealth, then go for it. If it fails, then that's on you. But again, you are not given the option. When you can and can't use stealth is set in stone. Sometimes I'm even at a particular point where I can't even go into cover because the devs deemed it inappropriate. Now that's just ridiculous.
It's precisely what troubles me.
The duration of the game is also up in the air, subject to individual taste. I personally was fine with its length. At first I heard before it was released, someone leaked a video where they completed it in 5 hours. It was somewhere between that and 7 hours I believe it took me to complete it, as well as the fact that I played it on the hardest setting available. But I'm fine with a short campaign. The campaign's duration wasn't an issue for me. The ending of the game was anticlimactic to say the least. Still not complaining, as this is again subjective. A word of advice though, watch the credits roll. There's a bit more to see that screams sequel. Hopefully Ready at Dawn listens and takes constructive criticism for the next go.
Yet if the same circumstances should present themselves, I would do exactly as I have done.
I really have no hate for this game because although I see its glaring faults, I still had a great time with it. But other than those that I've already pointed out, here are a few other really bad points. When you encounter the Lycans, the battle seems really repetitive, as you have to approach them again in a set-in-stone kind of way. Yeah, rinse-repeat style. Then, there's no real crouch control. You crouch when the game allows you to. Your AI partners are completely useless. The cover swapping mechanic needs so much work. You can't pull your weapon out whenever you want to. The camera, although I said it's good, seems to zoom in a bit too much when you go into cover. And on another side, although the story was presented well, it still falls short as the entire thing fails to emote enough for you to care about any of the characters. Like for example when Sir Percival died. Then, the game offers no co-op, a component which seems like it would be a given for a game like this. And of course there's no multiplayer, no online PvP. Now while I don't think every game needs this title in particular could do with some longevity. The game has zero replay value. Absolutely no reason to pick it up again once you've seen the credits roll. This will bother gamers who, 1. expected a longer, more robust experience, and 2. those who don't have a boatload of titles to play. Yeah, you might feel shortchanged if you paid full price for this. So to sum it up, I personally enjoyed this game thoroughly. With all my observations and few complaints, playing The Order 1886 was still satisfying. The devs simply took a course that in this day and age is generally frowned upon, as most gamers are accustomed to a specific gameplay experience expected from a game of this genre. But I guess devs might argue The Order 1886 isn't the genre most people think it is. But then that brings about the question, whose fault is it? Does that fault lie in overall presentation and game design? Oh well. Although I must take into consideration the general public's opinion, I must also judge this game based on my own personal feelings and preferences as well, how I personally felt playing through this. If I didn't do that, then what would be the point? I might as well cut and paste someone else's review I found on Google and present it here as my own.
And what if you're wrong?
The lab gives The Order 1886, flaws and all, a 7 out of 10.
Very well.